Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today, Chapter 1, History of Pakistan, Period 2, Lecture 5, Week 1, Book Pakistan Studies for Class 10th, Balochistan Textbook Board, Quetta. Previous knowledge, page 9 to 10. Main points were Constitution 1973. What is the Constitution? Constitution is a legal code of a democratic state. Then the constitutional reforms, and we discussed about the silent features of the Constitution 1973. Evaluation, relevant assignments, and you can see the relevant pics about the Constitution in Pakistan. Today we are going to discuss topic number 14, Ziaul Haq Government 1977 to 88, page number 10 to 12 from your textbook. Ziaul Haq Government 1977 to 88. The main points. First one, protest by the Pakistan National Alliance PNA in March 1977. So in March 1977, Pakistan National Alliance PNA that launched a movement to protest against the government on the behalf of the elections. So their protest was successful. And the next point is imposition of martial law. So imposition of martial law or implementation of martial law on 5th of July 1977. As a result of this protest, the Chief of Army Staff, General Muhammad Ziaul Haq, that sacked the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto government on 5th of July 1977 and imposed the martial law. So Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, before that it was the government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He was the Prime Minister. As you have noticed in the revision, Chaudhry Fazl Ilahi was the President and he was the Prime Minister according to the Constitutional Reforms 1973. So after the protest by PNA, at that time Chief of Army Staff General Ziaul Haq that sacked or eliminated the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto governments on 5th July 1977 and imposed the martial law. On 5th of July 1977. Remember the date, relevant date. Then formation of cabinet by Ziaul Haq in August 1978. After imposing the martial law, General Ziaul Haq, while addressing the nation, resolved to conduct the free and the fair elections the same year in the month of the October. Despite his announcement, he didn't fulfill his promise. He formed his cabinet in August 1978 and designated himself as the President of Pakistan. So after that, he remained in power for next 11 years. So this is the relevant pick for the imposition of martial law by Ziaul Haq on 5th of July 1977. That is the protest by Pakistan National Alliance PNA. Next topic number 15, reforms of Ziaul Haq government. So when the Ziaul Haq announced him as the president, what steps were taken by him for the welfare of the country? reforms by Ziaul Haq government. So the main points included measure for Islamization. To make a country as a complete Islamic country, he took some sound measures for that. And what were that measure for Islamization? This picture is relevant. The last one is for the sake of the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto by Ziaul Haq government, where he is announcing to take that government. Now the same topic, measure for Islamization as the reform by the Ziaul Haq government. The main points included, the first one is the prayer break. Introduce the prayer break in the government offices during the working hours by Ziaul Haq government. Next one is the establishment of the prayer system. On 13th August 1984, in order to establish the prayer system was issued, and through which the directors, the prayer monitors, Nazmin Salat, they were appointed. And the third Islamic measures, so the establishment of the prayer system was on 13th August 1984 by Ziaul Haq government. The next point, the next Islamic measure was the preservation sanctity of the sacred month. So at the start of the Ramzanul Mubarak on 14th of August 1978, on 14th of August 1978, the preservation of the Islamic month Ramzanul Mubarak, he announced the same measures or some important measure for preserving the sanctity of the sacred month. These included the ban on eating, drinking, and smoking publicly, and order for closing the cinema houses during the Taraweeh prayers. So the peoples, they were banned that during the Ramzan they can't eat publicly, they can't smoke publicly, and especially the cinema houses would be closed during the Taraweeh prayer. So these were some bias by the government of Ziaul Haq as the measure for the Islamizations. And the next important point is the telecasting of the religious programs. So the media was Pakistan television. They were bound and they were given the task to produce or telecast only the special religious programs. Next is improvement of the Hajj facilities. So the Ziaul Haq government also took the steps for the improvement of the Hajj facilities and Hajj conferences. For that, the Hajj conferences they were held every year to discuss the Hajj affairs, to resolve the Hajj affairs, so that the more people they can attempt the Hajj. And the next important point for the measure of Islamization in Pakistan by Ziaul Haq government, the most important point, you can see the relevant impact, that was the promulgation of the Hudud Ordinance. So the most important point or the step taken during the Ziaul Haq government was the promulgations of the Hudud Ordinance. Through this ordinance, the 4 punishments clearly enshrined in the Holy Quran that have been mentioned in the Holy Quran, and for that the punishment has also been mentioned. So this hudud was also implemented on these 4 punishments, and they were in force that the persons who will be involved in that punishment, they will be punished. Those included the person who will be involved in that sins, they will be punished strictly, and those included punishments were theft, adultery, wine drinking, and the false accusations of the adultery. So these 4 punishments have been mentioned in the Quran, and for that the Hudud Ordinance was promulgated by the Ziaul Haq government as the measure for the Islamization. And the next is the issuing of the Sharia Ordinance. So on 15th of June 1988, Ziaul Haq government issued the Sharia Ordinance, according to which the Islamic Sharia was declared to be the supreme law of the country. Islamic Sharia means that what has been mentioned according to the Islamic rules and the regulations, that will be the prior law of the country, and the people, they have to follow that. Next important point is elimination of the interest. Elimination of the interest, as the Ziaul government, they took the various steps to eliminate the interest based economy, and from the country, and they announced the deduction of 2.5% of the salary from the personal bank on the first day of the Ramadan for the Ramzan month's reforms. So they facilitated the bank's accounts, opening of the bank accounts on the basis of the profits and the loss sharing, and investment in the various companies on the basis of the partnership. So they just want to eliminate the interest and make the country interest free country or the economy. So that's why they took the steps for the elimination of the interest. And the next point is Islamic based education. The Zia government took the sound measure to establish the educational system of the country on the basics of the Islamic teachings. How? That the subjects of the Islamic and the Pakistan studies, they were made compulsory up to the graduation level, and they made the learning of the Arabic as a compulsory subject from class 6 to 8. So these were some educational Islamic based educational reforms during the Ziaul Haq government. And the next important, here you can see the relevant for the Sharia law. Under the Islamic Sharia, the punishments for the four mentioned sins in Holy Quran. And then the Islamic based education reforms. Here again the measure for Islamization. The remaining point is the enforcement of the zakat and the usher system. So the zakat and the usher system, they will enforce zakat, as the people who have the money more than their needs, they have to pay that money for the basic needs of the other poor peoples from their salaries, from their income. So this system and the usher system, that was enforced as the measure for the Islamization by the Ziaul Haq government. Here you can see the relevant peak for that. So from the Islamic point of the view, the Muslims, they should pay the zakat, and when they pay the zakat, their income increase automatically. So that's why this was enforced. Topic number 16, reforms of the Ziaul Haq government. What reforms were taken by the Ziaul Haq government? That is the Afghan Jihad and its impacts. The main points: invasion of Soviet Union to Afghanistan, December 1979. So in the early days of General Zia government, the Russia invaded the neighboring and Islamic country, our neighboring and Islamic country, Afghanistan. By then, the Russia was much larger country that was not divided into the parts, and that was called the Soviet Union. So in December 1979, when the Soviet army invaded Afghanistan, what was the role of Pakistan? The Pakistan opens its border for the war-stricken Afghan refugees. The next important point is the negative intention of the Soviet Union or the Russia, that it was quite obvious and it was sure that if the Soviet Union had occupied Afghanistan, she will not stop there, and she would rather try to sweep through Pakistan as well, to access to the sea and compete and trade with the USA, as Pakistan has the most important geographical position in the world map, central position. So that's why by invading the Afghanistan, the negative intention of the Russia was to invade Pakistan as well, and to dominate on the trade routes of the Pakistan and have the access on trade with the USA through these routes, the Europe and the other rich countries of the world. So What happened after that? The next point is the financial and the moral support of the Muslim countries. In that situation, the President Zia called an emergency meeting of the foreign ministers of the Muslim countries, and they condemned the invasion of the Soviet Union on Afghanistan, and they promised the financial and the moral support for the Afghan refugees. So the Afghan refugees, when they were allowed to enter in Pakistan after the invasion of Russia. The next topic 16 for the same, Afghan Jihad and its impacts. And now, what were the impacts when Afghan refugees they entered in Pakistan? What were the negative or the positive impacts on the Pakistani society? We will read here. The first is the rehabilitation of the refugee was the main, their settlements of their population in to adjust their population in the Pakistan population. That was a big task for the governments, and still it is the rehabilitation of the refugees. The war in Afghanistan affected the Pakistani society by many ways. According to an estimate, over 3 million Afghans took refuge in Pakistan. Due to the certain administrative limitations, the government could not confine these refugees to special camps, and they rather spread over the entire country and established their cottage colonies at many different places. The Pakistan's economy also suffered a lot from the influx of the Afghan refugees, and so in fact the world community provided too little, as they promised the Pakistan that they will provide the financial and the moral support, but they provided too little assistance to Pakistan to rehabilitate the refugees. The first was this impact, and next was the deterioration of the health. So after entering of the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, their concentration of in urban areas created many problems like the deterioration of the health and hygiene, and then law and order situations, they also suffered a lot. After that, the arms smuggling also cause the instability in Pakistan society. So all these the crimes started after the entering of the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, especially the arms smuggling, the law and other situation, the disturb a load, and the also the problems of the health and the hygiene created in the Pakistan after entering of the Afghan refugees in Pakistan. So this is an estimated number of the displaced Afghan refugees in Pakistan after the invasion of Soviet Union on Afghanistan. And the Afghan refugees, you can see the relevant page. The next, let's come towards our evaluation, and once again you can only attempt the questions in the evaluation if you have listened carefully all the explanation and tally the explanation with your books. So let's come towards the evaluation. The first one is, what was the role of Pakistan in Jihad Afghanistan? What was the role as the Pakistan after the invasion of Russia? The Pakistan played a role that it opened its border for the war-stricken Afghan refugees. When Ziaul Haq said the Bhutto government and imposed the martial law, so on 5th July 1977, the Ziaul Haq sacked the Bhutto government and he imposed the martial law. What is Hudud Ordinance? The Hudud Ordinance that was promulgated by the Ziaul Haq government, and through this ordinance you know that the 4 punishment that had been clearly enshrined and mentioned in the Holy Quran, so they were enforced, that if the people they were involved in that sense, they will be punished like that has been mentioned in the Quran. When Russia invaded Afghanistan, so the Russia invaded Afghanistan in December 1979. Were the two impacts of Afghan Jihad on Pakistan. The two impacts, negative impacts, we see that the rehabilitation of the refugees, health and hygiene problems, law and order situations disturbing, and then the arms smuggling, that were the negative impacts of the Afghan Jihad on Pakistan. Now let's come to your assignments, and the students, it's very compulsory for you to attempt your assignments on your registers or in your notebooks and submit for the checking. So it should not be seems boring for you, and be sharp to attempt your assignments, relevant assignments. The first one, detailed note about the Islamic measure of the Ziaul Haq, as we have mentioned the different points. So you have to mention the 8 points in the Islamic measure of Ziaul Haq government. And what do you know about the Afghan jihad and its impacts? So what was the background, and then what were the impacts of the Afghan jihad on Pakistan society? Now the relevant objective exercises. The relevant objective exercises that are mostly the fill in the blanks and the optional questions that you will find on page 22-23. Question number 1, 2, 3. The relevant activity. So you students, you have to make a chart displaying the important features of 1973 Constitution, and this activity has been mentioned on page number 24. So by making a chart, it means that you can take any computer paper, you can paste it on your notebooks, and then you will write or display the important features of the 1973 Constitution. You can also paste the relevant pics on that and try to write it in your own words. These are the important features of the 1973 Constitution, and we have explained that. So student, if you find any difficulty to attempt your assignments, activity, objective exercises, or if there is any confusing point, you can give your feedback. But it's very compulsory for you people to submit your assignment as a relevant topic as soon as possible, and hope this video will be beneficial for you. Thanks and Allah Hafiz.